All right, guys, you asked, so I will deliver. You guys wanted to learn a little bit about Punnett squares, so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about Punnett squares. So a Punnett square, if you have heard about them before, maybe you haven't, a Punnett square just looks like this. It's a square, and it is separated into 4 quadrants. And what a Punnett square does is it allows us to look at the probability that offspring will have a certain characteristic. It also lets us look at the traits that offspring have, and it allows us to determine what type of genotype the parents of that offspring would have, and vice versa. So it lets us look from parents to offspring and see what are the common characteristics or probable characteristics, and it lets us look from the offspring, the children, and go back to the parents and see what their characteristics and genotypes could be. So how does a Punnett square work? Well, whenever you're using a Punnett square, you've got to talk about a specific trait. So let me do an example with you. I'm going to do eye color. All right, so let's talk about eye colors. We have to talk about dominant and recessive eye colors. So brown eyes is a dominant eye color. So I'm going to use big B to represent brown eyes. Blue eyes is a recessive eye color. So remember, recessive means you have to have 2 little b's in order to have blue eyes. If I have a big B and a little b, I have brown eyes. And if I have a big B and 2 big B's, I have brown eyes. So I have blue eyes. That means I have 2 copies of the little b allele. Well, both of my parents have brown eyes. So for the longest time when I was a kid, I always wondered, well, why do my parents have brown eyes and I have blue eyes? It doesn't make sense. Well, thanks to the work that Gregor Mendel did with the pea plants, we've learned a little bit more about how characteristics are passed from parents to children. So my parents are heterozygous for the brown eye genotype. So remember, heterozygous means different. That means that my dad has a capital B and a lowercase b for his alleles. And when you're setting up a Punnett square, you're going to put your parents on the outside of the square. So I chose to put my dad here. I could have put my mom here. But one parent is going to go up on the top of the Punnett square. And one parent is going to go to the side. My mother is also heterozygous for brown eyes. So we set the Punnett square up so the parents are on the outside. And once you've set it up, what's going to happen is there's a possibility that my dad could give me a big B. And there's a possibility that my mother could also give a big B for brown eyes to her offspring. There's a possibility that my dad could give a big B and that my mom could give a little b. There's a possibility that my mom could give a big B and my dad could give a little b. And finally, there's a possibility where my mom could give a little b and my dad could give a little b. Now, I'm using 2 different colors so you can see where these alleles are coming from and how we got these genotypes. But what's happening is the letters on top, they drop down into both of these boxes. So I've got big B, and this one is little b. And the letters on the side, they go across. So I'm going to place one big B here and one big B here. One little b here, one little b here. Now the order doesn't really matter, but we've talked about other lessons how we always like the capital letters to go first. That's why over here the pink one's first and over here the blue one's first. But when we look at this, we can see the different possibilities of offspring and the different possibilities for eye colors that my parents can give to their offspring. Now that we've completed our Punnett square, we can list all of the genotypes. Remember, genotypes are the combination of alleles. So I see we have a big B. We have big B, little b. And we have little b. So those are the genotypes. And we can also write a genotypic ratio. A genotypic ratio just compares all of these to each other. So we have one big B. We had two big B, little b's. And we had one little b. So if you remember doing ratios, we're going to use the colons here. Okay? And we can also look at a genotypic percent. All right, so the percent, each one of these, there's 4 total. So each one of these boxes is worth 25%. So I have 25% of the boxes were big B. I had 2 boxes. So 2 out of 4, half, or 50% were heterozygous, big B, little b. And 1 box, so that's again 25%, was little b. It was recessive. So this is how you get your genotypes. First, you're looking in your boxes to see what genotypes you had. If you want to get the ratio, you're counting the number of times each was listed. So 1 time for big B to big B, 2 for big B, little b, and 1 for little b. And the percentages, each of these boxes are worth 25%. So you would add those together. There's only 25% for big B. There's 2, or so 25 plus 25, that's 50% for the heterozygous, big B, little b. And there's 1 box, so 25% for the little b. A Punnett square lets us look at the phenotypes as well. Remember, phenotypes is what you see. It's like a photo. So when I look at all of these squares, my choices are that I'm either going to have brown eyes. So I've got these ones all make brown eyes because they all have capital B's. Or I could have blue eyes. Okay. You can also come up with a ratio for that. Okay. I would have 3 brown eyes. And here we're not necessarily caring whether it's heterozygous or homozygous. All I care about is what I see. So capital B would make it brown eyes. Another capital B, that's 2 brown eyes. Another capital B, that's 3 brown eyes. And that leaves me with 1 blue-eyed. So 3 to 1 is the phenotypic ratio. 3 brown eyes to 1 blue eye. And if I want to change that into a percent, I'm just counting each box as 25%. So I've got 3 boxes that made brown eyes. Well, 25 plus 25 plus 25, that's 75% of all of the population should be brown-eyed. And 25%, so only 1 box, gives me the possibility of being blue-eyed. So me having blue eyes, with my parents both having brown eyes, it's quite rare to have a blue-eyed child. There was only a 25% that I would have blue eyes when I was born, and a 75% that I had brown eyes. So that's how we use a Punnett square. First, you're going to draw your box. You're going to add your parents' information, and then you're going to insert each of your parents' information into the box. From there, you can list your genotypes, the ratios, and the percentages for genotypes. And you can use that information to determine the phenotypes from the Punnett square and the ratio and the percentage. If you are still kind of lost on how to do a Punnett square, at the end of this video, I will have a link to another video that you can watch that gives maybe a little bit more explanation. But if you are set to try some practice, go on to the next video, part 2 of Punnett squares, so that you can see some practice and some more explanation on how to use Punnett squares.